So good afternoon and welcome to this session called Been There, Done That. And we have a wonderful panel of educators who literally have been there and done that as it relates to improving literacy, instruction, intervention in their districts. My name is Laura Axtell, and I'm an education specialist with Reading Horizons. And my goal here today is really just to facilitate our conversation and to make sure that you get what you need. The other thing is that there's going to be, I think, some real words of wisdom. And so we have prepared a document that we'll be able to send to you digitally after the conference is over, so that when they say something that makes some sense to your situation or something you'd like to follow up on, you'll have that in print. So we're going to start by just letting each of our panelists introduce themselves and give you a little bit about why they're sitting up here. Okay? And then we'll kind of go from there. So.
Why? Hi, I'm Lynn Hobroch. I'm an assistant superintendent in Friendswood, Texas. Friendswood, Texas is just outside of Houston. It is the bedroom community, a suburban community for NASA, 6,000 students. And I have been in that role for 6 years now. And prior to that, I was a principal for 8 years.
Hi, I'm Lisa Toole. I am a curriculum supervisor with a rural county school district in Ohio, about 60 miles east of Cincinnati. We have approximately 4,000 students in 8 different buildings, and I serve 3 different communities, which are about 15 to 20 miles apart. This is my 23rd year in education, and I have done a role of many opportunities. First grade teacher, second grade, third grade, fourth and fifth. I've been Title I, literacy coordinator, assistant principal, and now I'm curriculum supervisor for this district.
I'm Amy Jones, and I'm the Director of Elementary Curriculum and Director of Federal Programs and Pre-K in Lauderdale County Schools, which is in Florence, Alabama. Florence is located in the northwest corner of the state. Our county borders Tennessee and Mississippi. We serve about 8,500 students. We have pre-K through 12 schools, meaning that all of our students pre-K through 12 are in one building. We have 7 schools like that. We have 1 school that's a standalone elementary that's a pre-K through 6 that does feed into 2 of those 7 high schools. I have taught elementary school through all the grades K through 6, actually K through 7. For 16 years, I was a private school administrator for 1 year. I was an instructional coach for reading for 2 years, and now in this role, I just started in July. So we really just kicked off our big reading literacy initiative, but we've had a good start.
Great. Okay, so could each of you discuss some of the literacy challenges that you've seen in your district? And you have a lot of diversity going on in terms of location and student populations. And what have you seen as the biggest issues for both your students and your educators?
Okay. Friendswood's students are good. They come to us good. They probably could read, good. So one of our challenges in some ways is the idea of how to make us great. They're good enough. Why do we need to even work on what we're working on? Along with that, we have in Friendswood a hodgepodge of good reading teachers and good things going on, but nothing common. And I just was in Lucy Calkins' session where when we can all talk the same language, we can all grow together. And that just came out so strongly with her video about how we need to have a common practice so that we can grow. Friendswood's also starting to get a little bit more diverse, but all of you would chuckle with that. We had mostly a white population, but now we're starting to get those learners that aren't so easy, and we don't know what to do with them.
I'll paint a little different picture for the students that I serve in the communities. We're not very diverse at all, and their thinking is not very diverse. Serve about anywhere from 65 to 70% our socioeconomic status and free and reduced lunch. Poverty is a huge issue. Opioid Drugs are an issue with a lot of our parents. We're starting to filter students in that are products of those environments. With that, there is a low level of early language development that we're seeing. Students are just not coming to us ready to learn or prepared because they're in survival mode. So we have redirected and really looking at the whole child and social and emotional learning, but also combating with the foundational pieces of literacy and kind of going back to our roots and what we understand and really being there for students. We noticed one of the biggest challenges in our district was the third grade reading guarantee. I know you're probably familiar with that. In Ohio, you pass the test or you're retained. And we do 4 years of diagnostics, K1, 2, and 3. There's a reading improvement and monitoring plan. We were showing like 70% of our students on a reading improvement and monitoring plan. That means intensive intervention by law. So that was a huge challenge for us. And we saw that we really needed to dig deep and figure out what was going on. And one of the things I noticed is that we did not have common instructional language across grade levels, let alone among teachers at that grade level. So we decided to do some sincere professional development in phonics instruction and phonemic awareness as our foundational piece. And then we purchased some new programs to address it, and we are seeing some major gains with what we've done.
Well, we serve, in Lauderdale County, we serve schools that have a 7% free and reduced lunch population to a 70% free and reduced lunch population. I think our greatest challenge as a district is, like a lot of other districts, funding. Of our 137 school districts in the state of Alabama, we are 107. That's where we rank. So we're not even at the state average, so we do struggle with that. But our students in K3 and all the way up through 8, 3rd through 8, they continue to score above the state average on our state assessment. So we are thankful for that, but we know we have issues. So for our teachers, I feel like the biggest literacy challenge we've had has just been teacher knowledge of the phonics piece. They're not receiving that in their pre-service teacher programs. They're not coming into the classrooms. I see a lot of nods, so you're seeing that too. They're just not coming into the classrooms knowing what to teach the children, and it's not their fault. They do what they know to do. So we felt like, going into this, we are taking on this literacy initiative to not only help the students, but also to help the teachers, to train them, to help them better know how to instruct the students. I felt like for our students, a literacy challenge we've had was just to have the resources to meet their needs. Those students who learn in spite of us, we're doing okay. We've since seen that after we've brought in the literacy initiative that we're seeing our middle and high students had a lot of gaps that we were not recognizing before, but they were still surviving. They were doing okay. But our students with challenges who have maybe dyslexic tendencies or just they're struggling readers, we really didn't have a resource for them in our general classroom. They'd have to go to intervention to receive that, and they might not get exactly what they needed there either. So on that note, we tried with our literacy initiative to make sure that what was going on in the general ed classroom, what was going on in the intervention classroom, what was going on in the special ed classroom was the same program. So that those students who struggle most were receiving consistent cues, consistent language, as you mentioned, consistent everything, so that they're not having this program thrown at them in this room. They're going to this room and getting another program with different language and different components. So that's one thing that I think has really helped us as we've gotten started, and I think it will help our students as we move ahead. For myself as a leader, I think the biggest challenge for us, as I told you, we just started our literacy initiative this past fall. I think the biggest challenge for me is what lies ahead, because we have to support, we have to provide continual training, we have to provide that accountability, the positive accountability that needs to be there to ensure that continued success for the teachers and for the students. And for me, in my role, I just don't want to drop the ball. So I want to make sure that we have a good plan in place.
Great. So please share some specifics about your curriculum design and your instructional strategies. So what have you changed or implemented? Let's start with that. And then what are your plans for meeting the literacy needs of your students in whole class and intervention? It's a big question.
That's a very big question. A couple years ago, the first place, we do have reading interventionists, and what they said to me, Lynn, you've got holes in phonics training. We in our literacy program, the kids just weren't getting that explicit instruction. And so our beginning strategy was to pick up a phonics program, Reading Horizons, train all of our teachers, K through 2, in that program, and so that we all were delivering the same type of phonics message. And out of that, we're starting to see that spelling improve. We're seeing word attack. We are knowing that the kids truly have the skill set for just that foundational. What we're moving on to now is, and again, Friendswood just has all kinds of great teachers, but they're doing everything. And this is going to turn into a challenge, how to honor their expertise. They are all good, yet try to work harder at coming together. And so right now, this year, the principals and I as a team, and so there'll be 4 elementary schools, we are working together and going out, receiving the training, what are best practices. And we truly believe it's that balanced literacy framework. And so out of that, then, how are we going to deliver that? What's our plan? What's our problem of practice? And now how are we going to push that out? One of the books that we are using, or I've got my notes all over it, and it's an ASCD book, but Literacy Unleashed, which is going to, it's for our leaders, actually. And it's the idea that they can walk from classroom to classroom and look, what should we see in a classroom? And this summer, we are going to do an out-and-out training of all of our K through 5 reading teachers, as well as our principals. But that's one of the problems we've learned about, is you don't just give them a training and walk away. Somehow we're going to dig up some money, because we've never had a literacy coach in Friendswood. It's been, Lynn, the person, that's it. And so we've given them trainings, but this year we're going to try to support them in their training and actually create those learning groups that are going to work along. So we're bringing people in, and we're all going to dive in together into a balanced literacy framework. I think, is that enough to say right now? What were your questions? I'll come back if I miss something.
Well, actually, let me just piggyback on that.
Yes.
So that's kind of what you're worked on now. And then, so what are your plans for meeting the literacy needs, whole class and intervention?
Okay. Well, another thing that we do have in place already is an RTI program, a response to intervention program. And in Texas this coming year, we even have to report who are the kids who are going into intervention at level 2, level 3. We will have to say who's there, which means we really have to define and understand which kids get it. In the past, it's kind of been the teacher who yells the loudest might get the interventionist. That's not the way that's supposed to work. There's supposed to be a defined program, and we feel we've got that in place. So where we're going, we've got the interventions. We really believe we've got that, although we want to truly strengthen our Tier 1 instruction. But after that, we want to strengthen, this literacy initiative is going to strengthen our teachers so that Tier 1 instruction may not need Tier 2 instruction, or only a less amount of students will be in that.
So Lisa, it might help to break up that question again for you too. So start with talking a little bit of specifics about curriculum design and instructional strategies, and then we'll talk about the second part.
This indeed is a loaded question. I think anytime you talk about curriculum and instructional strategies, you'll have people kind of all over the place or all over the spectrum when they're having the conversation, and my response might be that way too. When I think of curriculum design and instructional strategies, my district has been completely transparent with the implementation and the reform of Common Core state standards. We really broke it down and did over 70 alignment meetings in 2 years to have teachers work through that and deconstruct those standards, and actually giving them time as teams and grade levels. And I would meet with the fourth grade ELA, and I would meet with the third grade ELA, and then we did math too the same way. But really letting them have time to work through those standards and deconstruct, unwrap, but also wrap their heads around the language within those standards so that they could understand the level of rigor that was needed in the level for mastery. And then from there, the curriculum design, everything is transparent on Google Docs. It's always a work in progress. We're moving and changing and implementing, and that is the consensus map for our teachers. And we do give them permission to plug those in and move them around, but we're not just talking coverage or anything of that nature. We're talking wholeheartedly instructing, designing lessons around them. We aligned student learning objectives to those standards with Bloom's taxonomy. I'm sure you're aware of that. And then before we could even finish with the Bloom's taxonomy alignment, DOK came out, depth of knowledge. And, I was like, we can't just throw Bloom's out. That's important. So we broke down and let our teachers work on the depth of knowledge within their teams. And that's where the substance for the standard really takes place, where the meat of the education happens, is with those instructional strategies and what they're doing in the classroom. So I told you it was a loaded question. As far as alignment with intervention and whole class, we do a couple different things with assessment. We do universal benchmarking system with all students. I'm sure you're probably aware of that. Ames Web, Dibbles, we do Ames Web. We also do NWEA MAP, which is an online assessment that evaluates the students. We do that so we know if the programs that we're using in instructional strategies are working or not for growth over time. With that said, the resources from the new reading and math series have been organized for teachers so that they have quick access to them, but they've also worked within those programs so that they understand them, so that they are the experts on it. It's not me. It's not the secondary supervisor. It's not the principal. It's the teachers. It's the educators who are actually doing the messy, legitimate work. They are the experts within the curriculum. We're very rural. We're very local. We don't have access to a lot of professional literacy coaches or literacy specialists. I mean, if they come in, they're coming in from Florida or Texas or, Boston, and that's big dollars for our district. So my teachers are the ones who are doing the curriculum alignment, and that's why it is so transparent.
Okay. For our district in Alabama, I guess maybe 12 years ago was the first time we all kind of jumped with both feet into a basal program that we thought would meet all of our needs, from phonics to comprehension to grammar to writing to the whole 9 yards. And we've been in that for so long that I think we just felt like that's what we were supposed to do, and we kind of lost our creativity. We lost our ability to feel as teachers that we were empowered to do something different because we were so held to the basal. We would make jokes about having it. We'd have to carry it on our arm. Like it was just what we had to do. We had to take it with us all the time. And with Common Core, same thing. We just continued the basal. We adopted the same basal again, but it was just the same thing repackaged with a few changes. So I don't know that we were really tracking our data at that time to see our children were struggling. But it was teachers who said, our kids are really lacking with phonics skills. And we had been, of course, doing the same program for so long that they had seen those kids come through all the way through the elementary grades, and they just did not have the skills to be able to problem solve words, especially when they made it to those multisyllabic words, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. So after noticing those needs, we looked into an explicit phonics program to replace what was being done in the basal component. So we pulled out, and we are in the process of pulling out the basal component of phonics and replacing it with an explicit phonics program. We are not in our year of adoption for ELA, so we're going to have to stick with our curriculum, our comprehension piece and our writing piece until time that we can fully look at those. But we felt like phonics was our greatest need right now to be able to address those early readers and to get them a good foundation. As far as the way we've rolled this out, we're not as far into the implementation as some of the other districts. We are blessed in our schools with reading coaches. The Alabama Reading Initiative provides coaches for our schools. So we have reading coaches in our schools, and our Title I schools, we have 6 Title I schools of our 8 elementary schools, they all have interventionists. So in the fall, we trained our interventionists and our coaches to start working with our students who were struggling, those students who were in need of Tier 3 instruction. And so they have been working with those students, and they're going back to the classroom. The kids are going back, and the classroom teachers are seeing such a difference in the students after being in those classrooms with those intervention teachers and coaches that they're bought in. We've already trained our K-3 teachers on the program that they will actually fully implement next fall, but they're bought in. They're already trying it in their classrooms, giving testimonials of how well it's working. So I think it's going to be just outstanding as we move forward. We're excited about it.
So this might be a good time to, since those were some big questions, do you have any questions for them just about those kinds of things? Anyone? Okay. Well, please shoot your hand up if you have something you'd like to ask. Huh? Oh, yes.
I'd like to know what the specific programs that you are using that have been beneficial, successful for you.
Oh, so what we've decided, we're going with the Fontes and Pinnell idea and their framework, I would say. But one of the, right on the side is the word study. And word study, we have felt it's been more vague. And that's why we needed to go into something that was more explicit, systematic, and the teachers have had word study on their shelves all the time, but there were so many eye-popping, oh, that's why we do this. So that one, the word study on the side is where we bought Reading Horizons. And then now we are in the next part of putting together literacy libraries and just understanding the framework more than a program. We're also so fortunate. Texas is changing their TEKS. So teachers are going to need that anyhow. So it's just the time for because we're not Common Core. So our Texas essential knowledge and skills. And so we're more going to, our program is to power up our teachers to use that literature and know why they're doing it.
I think about the history of the district I've worked in, and we have done the Fontes and Pinnell leveled readers, and we still have those. We still use those as a supplemental. But we also use Houghton Mifflin Hardcourt Journeys series. That's 1st through 6th grade. And then we use Reading Horizons, and we also purchased the digital literacy piece called Discovery. So it's really Reading Horizons Discovery, and we implemented that K-3. We decided to go ahead and do the online piece because it supports the teacher script or the actual lesson within the class. So you can use it whole group, or you can reassign, or it's just rehearsal and practice of the skill that the teacher has taught in the classroom. So we're seeing a lot of success with that. It has different components within it. It has the syllacation, it has rhyming, it has everything. It really is a complete package. And it has some assessments on there that you can monitor progress over time with those students. What we're seeing, you asked for another program that we use. It's called Star Early Literacy. Are you guys familiar with that? I see some heads shaking. We use that as our K-3, basically our K-3 benchmark diagnostic at the beginning of the school year. But our 2nd and 3rd grade kind of switches over to, and even some of our 1st grade, switch over to the STAR reading component because they're moving so quickly. But definitely K-1, Star Early Literacy is being benchmarked pre, mid, post to monitor that growth over time. Last year, our first year to implement Reading Horizons, we moved, in the 3 elementaries, we moved at least 30 kids from September to December out of intervention, like urgent intervention, to benchmark. And one of my veteran teachers, she said to me, I give credit completely. She's 25 years in education, and she's taught all 25 years in 1st grade. Excellent teacher. She said, I give complete credit to Reading Horizons. This is making a difference. And then the data was even better this year, the second year of implementation. So I'm seeing huge numbers moving out of that intervention into benchmark the first half of the year. And then post scores are, we'll see even more. We're seeing where we had maybe 24 kids in intervention. There's 2 in there right now based on those scores. So.
I didn't hear your district sizes. I'm in a district with about 25,000 kids, 75 to 76% are low income. And so I'm thinking about like implementation of these different initiatives, and I'm one English specialist for all 44 schools, K-12, technically pre-K to dual enrollment. So when we talk about implementing literacy initiatives, and I'm new in this position as well, so just over a year. So we're looking at building our literacy plan, and one of the things that we continue to stumble on is monitoring of implementation and what that looks like, because obviously I can't do it, and we don't have the principal capacity right now to monitor implementation either. So just any suggestions of what you all done, and again, I don't know if you have comparable size districts.
I don't know that it's comparable either. You said 44 schools?
44 schools.
There needs to be more of you. To be honest with you, but I have on a smaller scale. What we did is I trained the assistant principals and the principals. They sat they participated in the trainings during the summertime with the teachers, with the primary teachers. They did the activities. They were up, they were down, they were charting, they were decoding. They learned how to do it because I felt like if they didn't understand it, they couldn't observe it and evaluate it for, renewal. Let's just face it, that's where our world is right now. So I didn't feel like it was fair to the teacher if the administrator didn't have a good understanding of what was expected. And I think a lot of times the administrators don't come from the primary world, so they don't understand how hard it is to get these kids to read. It just doesn't happen by osmosis. If they do, then they're already on their way. They don't necessarily need a program that is decoding every single word. But this is unique in its feature that you can train who you want to train so that they can be an expert in it too. I would suggest that I would love to say, go recruit somebody, but you're going to need some ideas for implementation, adult implementation in each building. And I think she may have a suggestion because we were talking earlier about what she's done with building capacity, and I think that will work. I'll let Amy share that.
Well, and we do not have as many schools nor as many students as you do, but we are 75 miles from one school to the farthest school at the other end of the county, so we do cover quite a distance. I can't get to those schools all the time. Our principals, as she said, are mostly high school. We're mostly high school teachers. So not only we haven't gotten to the point of training them yet, but what I started out doing was building that capacity with those coaches and those interventionists so they could be the specialist in the building. So when the teachers started implementing, they would have the support. They could go to that person as a resource. That person goes in their room and models lessons. And we've already started some of that because our teachers were trained in the middle of February. So I've had a lot that have already gotten started. My encouragement to them was to just start tier 2. Start with your small group. Start working through the routines, the kinesthetic cues, and that sort of thing. But they are so ready to move forward with it. They're asking for the coaches and the interventionists who've already had such success and been doing this in their classrooms. They're saying, come in and show me how to do this. So building that capacity has been very important. And that would be my suggestion for you, is just to find those key people in the buildings that can provide
For
that.
us, what it comes down to is we're building that capacity in our title, so we have Title I reading specialists. But when the principal comes in and says, do it this way, they have to listen to their principal. And our organizational chart is set up such that schools are over here under somebody, and curriculum instruction is over here.
Wow.
And so we don't actually have any direct, so like we can't say you have to do it this way. Not that we would want to mandate anything, but like we just, we offer suggestions to what we think they maybe should be doing. And then everything comes through the principal. So the principal has to say, she's the specialist, she understands, we have to be working on phonics.
Did any of you start with pilots?
No, but you made me think of something that We did in Adams County. I was looking at this program for about 2 years, honestly, because when I would go in to observe teachers, they were making up stuff. I mean, I heard two vowels go walking. I was hearing two vowels are in the car and the one's driving, and I was like, what is this? No, stop. So I thought we need to figure something out here. What I did is I just called the company up, and I had been looking at it on YouTube and videos and processing, and I'm lead by my gut type person. I was like, this is the right thing to do. But I reached out. I talked to a gentleman named Craig Blair at the time, and sure, they came in and showcased the entire program. I invited all K-3 teachers because they transition. They'll move from science. They'll move to, they're floaters sometimes. So I wanted everybody to have a say in the process and principals and let them hear basically the sales pitch, but they had a role in deciding whether the district went with this or not. And then following the showcase of Reading Horizons, I had them complete a questionnaire, and it was a simple 5 questions. What are your first thoughts about this program? Would you be interested in being trained? How does this fit into your world of teaching and instructional strategy and design? Do you feel it's appropriate for K1, K2, or K3? 97% of them came back and said, our K3 teachers need this, so do our intervention specialists, so do our title teachers. It was an overwhelming response. Everything was above 95% in the method of going forward with purchasing and making arrangements for them to be trained. So that's how I got stakeholder engagement. That's how I won them over. They felt like they had a say in choosing what we were going to do next, our next steps.
And I think your point about larger districts starts with scalability. Nail it and scale it, So you have to get it right on a small scale first, and you can often do that through piloting and getting that buy-in and the experts that have already done it, and then they can scale from there. Any other questions before we move on? Yes?
Do you map test all the way down to 2nd grade? Somebody said something about map testing in WEA.
Yeah, we start in 2nd grade.
Okay.
And we could do K3.
K3.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's an integral part of our response to intervention program. 3 times.
We have tried to do it 3 times, but we pulled the mid-year and just do the pre and the post.
And we give the performance series assessment by Scantron, which is very similar to the MAP. Yeah.
Any other questions? Yep.
I'm just wondering how, when you've got your phonics programs, your early literacy programs, how that changed the schedule of your ELA block, and maybe how you went about that, taking time away from other content areas.
Okay, who wants to take that one?
It was quite an adjustment the first year, but I think the phonics instructional piece is about 30 minutes is what they request, and a lot of times that's their opener. That's how they're opening their day in the K3 classroom, and they just plug it in. What we've noticed with using a basal series is that there is phonics instruction, but it's whatever is convenient to the story. So if it shows up in the story, that's what they're teaching. And the difference between Reading Horizons and a basal program is that it's very systematic, and it's that spiral curriculum that completely builds on previous lessons and keeps going on and rehearsing those strategies. There are also some alignment pieces out there if you have like a basal series that align with the Reading Horizons. So this 2nd year, I haven't heard a single complaint. And even the principals have design instruction where they want 30 minutes for the phonetic instruction, and then you can move into your reading block. And then there's even a writing block within that piece. So there's not been any discrepancies this year.
With this program, there's also the Discovery, the online piece, which supports, so students can go off, and that becomes one of the centers, and it's a meaningful center, and it's a very engaging center. So it supports it.
Yes.
For the teacher you were describing that had been teaching 25 years, what skills or tools were added to her toolbox that she now thought she was a much better reading instructor?
There's just some tricks and tips within the training and specific language. And there are multiple instructional strategies within the resources that accompany the program that they weren't aware of. A different teacher told me a month ago, she said, I wish I would have had this coming straight out of college. She says, why don't our universities provide this as an instruction, like one of their coursework? And I said, I don't know. Why don't they? That would be an awesome place for it to be implemented. From the experience, I sat through the training too, 2 different times. It's just little tips like the CK rule. What vowels follow C, what vowels follow K in a CK in the words. It's just things that you may not have had experience with. Things that are aha moments, like, why didn't I think of that?
Our teachers felt the same way. Whenever they left the training, one dear friend of mine, I called her because I knew she would give me an honest assessment.
Yeah.
And I said, tell me about what you learned today. And she said, I cannot believe that kids have left my room knowing how to read after all the things I learned today, because now I know so much more that I'm able to take to them. I had a 22-year veteran, first grade teacher, veteran teacher, who just messaged me last week, and she said, I wish we'd had this so much longer before, because she said, this is exactly what we've been lacking. Because a lot of your phonics programs in the basals will group so many skills in 1 week. She was doing like 5 different skills 1 week, and the children just cannot grasp all that.
Yeah.
Does that program come with decodable text?
Yes.
Okay.
I promise this is not a session to talk about Reading Horizons. And so if you want more information, we have a booth, and we can certainly talk to people afterwards. So if you want more specifics about that, we'd love to talk to you about that. But I'd also like to really address those issues that people have about moving your literacy improvement.
So my first question is, do any of your districts have challenges with teacher turnover rate, which mine does? And how do you sustain, you talked a lot about the importance of really good teachers who did not get the training in their pre-service. That really, what does literacy look like in the elementary classroom? What does that phonics instruction look like? How do you sustain the training and support for new teachers?
I'll start because they'll probably have better answers. But we, once we, so a teacher, a TOT model is what we picked up, and making sure what is most important to us is now going to be given to every new teacher coming in. So that's one. We don't have huge turnover, but we need that. And then,
so you have your own trainers.
We have
training
our own
of trainers,
trainers.
right within the.
But then we are also really hoping that our PLCs, once we get this training, we are going to learn and support each other and grow each other, because we will be commonly planning and learning.
We do have some significant turnover in teachers, but typically they'll move from one elementary to the other elementary. And they have, it's the same union, it's the same district, so they have an opportunity to do that. With our state licensure, though, you're a K-3, so you're not really going to go up to 4th through 7th grade or 8th grade. So they're moving from one primary classroom to another primary classroom. What we did is we trained everybody. And from here on out, I train all new hires if they are assigned to a K-3 classroom. I even give the option we do departmentalization at 3rd grade, 2nd and 3rd grade, and science teachers, math teachers. I welcome them to the training too, because a lot of times they are doing some type of tutoring session, from 7:45 until the bell rings, or they're doing an after-school tutoring. They need those strategies too. So, and then if they feel comfortable with that, they may be our next ELA teacher at 2nd grade if an opening comes up. They may feel more comfortable with that. So that's what some of the ideas we have had. You talked about what instructional design or what the perfect lesson would look like, or what we move towards in a primary classroom. Definitely that foundational piece of phonics and phonemic awareness every day. And we also, and that would come from the Reading Horizons, or it would come from the phonics lesson that they're explicitly teaching from the stories that they're using in the classroom. And then you're going to look at vocabulary work. We stress fluency only because we know fluency is a predictor for academic success all the way up through high school. But we have pulled back from fluency to some extent because it was so almost a religious belief that if they couldn't read like an auctioneer, they weren't going to be a reader. And they were word calling, and they were still meeting their benchmark, but they didn't understand a word they said. So if you think about it as a pyramid, we really hit the phonics, the phonemic awareness, the vocabulary, the fluency, and then, of course, comprehension. And that's why we couple this program with Basel series, the leveled readers from Fontes and Pinnell. We're really kind of doing all of it. I mean, if you came into my classroom or my teachers' classrooms, you'd be like, wow. I mean, they're doing a lot of different things to meet the needs of these students and make them readers.
We do not have high teacher turnover, I would not say. And the other part of your question was, yeah, I think it's just that onboarding process, just making sure, as she said, that they're receiving that training right off the bat, and they know the expectations, the non-negotiables. Yeah. District level.
There was another point that I wanted to make. This year was the first year that the company rolled out 6 online training modules. And it's based on the 6 chapters that you can do the training for chapter 1 if you're getting ready to implement chapter 1 or teach chapter 1. And we have offered that to all teachers who were previously trained and new teachers this year. So, and I've had several teachers who were trained the very initial year redo it. And I do offer them contact hours because it's a refresher. And they feel like that it's been more embedded in their work and that it's benefited them because the training is constantly a reminder to them. So that's an option.
Yes.
Do you have paraprofessionals in your buildings that you have also trained in this that are running small groups? And is it possible or is it explicit enough for them to step into it without the training?
Yes, we have. And I even have paraprofessionals that I may not be thinking about. They'll email me and say, hey, I'm working with this reading group and I'm interested in being trained in this. Do you think you could give me the access to it and send me the link? And they're willing to do that too. And it's benefited because it's amazing how we turn over reading to a paraprofessional that has no experience with teaching reading, but they're willing and they'll come back and say, this has been very beneficial to me. And I know it's the right thing to do with that. We've done that not only with this program, we've done that with other programs. We'll do intervention groups within Think Central, which is also a platform that we utilize, and give them access to that because there's some professional development in there that we utilize.
Yeah, we use paraprofessionals as well. We've also trained some of our computer lab techs or computer lab parapros that, when they don't have class sometime during their day, they might pull a group of students and we train them on the program, and it is very explicit and systematic so that they can use it with the children as well. And we're seeing lots of growth.
Mm-hmm.
So I lead a very large district, so I'm glad she mentioned that with the same work, and we've sort of done a lot of what you're doing already, but we rolled it out in phases, in kinder, first, and second, in a piloted study in terms of groups. So now we're looking at how do we scale this. We have 60 or 70 just elementary schools. We serve over 100,000 kids, 1,000 kids. Well, I can't even think of the number. It's a large number. Wondering, when you implemented it, did you implement it that way, or did you just implement K2 or K3? Because I'm trying to figure out how to do that and what gaps kids will have if you say start at second grade, and sort of what did you do to kind of help bridge that with the K and 1?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Mm-hmm. We did K1 the first year, second grade the second year, and then actually for third grade for us, our kids, we felt they were fairly equipped. So then we went into third grade teachers knew the skills, and we called it 5-minute phonics, but they just were able to continue the vocabulary, but they didn't have to do the intense work.
We rolled it out district-wide, and 2 different trainings. Had one May 24th and 25th, and then August 4th and 5th for people who couldn't make it to the 24th and 25th. I think we trained about 90 people altogether. So, I mean, if you're talking about 60 member in one building,
Yeah.
60 elementary schools.
Yeah.
We started with 6 and grew to 12, and now I'm trying to develop a skill, how we want to scale it.
Yeah, that's actually really common.
Yeah.
So I'd be happy to talk to you guys afterwards to talk about that because we do that a lot.
They probably would do it by grade level, which would be beneficial. You know, that's how we did ours. We did a K1 training session and a 2-3 training session. We had 2 rooms going on at the same time, 2 different trainers. And then the training that we had on a different date in 2 different days in August, I didn't have as many teachers. I had about 30. We just did 1 trainer on that day.
So I was at a Virginia State Reading Association conference recently, and one of the presenters talked a lot about equity and access and how we bridge that gap over the summer. So could you talk about any initiatives you have in your districts that you've seen success with around equity and access to high quality summer programming and access to books? I think from the literacy lens, have y'all implemented anything that's worked?
We do not have a summer program that's consistent in our district.
We run a summer boost program, 2 weeks in June for 3rd grade and then 2 weeks in August for 2nd grade. And I use a curriculum called, I think it's something meaning. I forget. Oh my gosh, I can see the box. Give me your information and I'll send it to you. My teachers really, what is it? I believe it is Reading and Writing for Meaning. And we use that as a summer program. It's basically just vocabulary, reading, think alouds, writing. That's what we focus on. We've had some success with that. The teachers really like it because it's different, a little bit different than what they're doing in the classroom. It's not going to be the same themes.
We don't have a program, but a structure that we've tried. We always talk about reading slump, and so then the past we've had, 3 weeks before school starts, we'll get the kids in. This last year, and I loved it, and it really worked, and it gave a lot of energy, was that it was 2 days every week the whole summer. Teacher said, sure, I can give you 2 days, and actually 2 mornings a week. And we continued it the whole summer, so there wasn't that slump idea. And it seemed to keep the reading going. No program necessarily, but that structure worked very well for teachers and students.
Another initiative we do is Kids Read Now. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that, but it is a grant, but they will send mail books to participating students, and then when they're finished, they can text the company, and they'll send them a little questionnaire or survey. They can answer it online, and then they'll mail them 3 more books.
Wow.
They get 10 books during the summer to keep.
So, we purchased 6 books for every elementary student to take home on the last day of school last year, which is great, but expensive,
Yes.
Obviously. And then, so the Hampton person was talking about, they do kind of the same thing. They give out books to students when they come in for K registration. They send them home with books over the summer. They were using LitCamp. And so we actually purchased LitCamp years ago and are continuing to use it for our summer program, but they were the only school I'd ever heard with success with LitCamp. So I was kind of hoping somebody else would be like, we've used it, loved it. But I mean, I think that's a really key piece of it. So many of our kids go home, they don't have access to books over the summer, and they're not reading. But this particular district was able to cut their summer slide by 90% of kids didn't slide over the summer.
That's right.
Well, what we know is if kids can continue to read and have access to, material that they're engaged with, that helps tremendously. So in the last couple minutes that we have left, and this is what we're going to be able to send to you digitally, we asked each of them, what if you went into this and had information to start, or as you've been through this process, what are your lessons? What is your takeaway? What are the big 3 major lessons that you've learned? So I'm going to start with you, Dr. Jones, and tell us what were your 3 big takeaways?
Okay. to first just show the need, make sure the decision makers, the teachers, everybody sees the need for why you're implementing what you're trying to do, the reason behind the initiative. Train your coaches and interventionists, anyone, your paraprofessionals, anyone you have in your school who can kind of kickstart it, because I believe that helps to build the buy-in that you're going to need to take it full scale. And then lastly, I believe as a classroom teacher, I always wanted to have a voice in what I was doing in my classroom. So I believe bringing teachers in, allowing them the opportunity to have a voice in your curriculum planning and mapping is critical. So we're in the process of doing that. Actually, when we get back from spring break, we'll be working on our curriculum mapping for next year and how to roll this out in our ELA block. So we're excited about that. But I'm bringing in the reading coach and the interventionist at each school who's already been doing it, along with some grade level teachers. So that's what I feel like will help make your initiatives a success.
Lessons learned for myself and my district was that we were really doing a poor job of teaching phonics, and I wasn't willing to turn my eye away from it any longer, and the teachers knew it too. So, and it really came full circle when we completed the training. They came to me and said, "This is awesome. This is so well worth my time. This is probably the best PD we've done." It really did build their teacher toolkit. And you can't always say that about professional development that you sat through and they're still using it. Again, it just brought them to common language and something that they felt would make a difference for them professionally, but in the end for their students. Second thing, and I think I've mentioned this earlier in the presentation, was train administrators, because if they value it and they see it in your teachers, and the teachers are practicing that, then it just validates everyone full circle. And then the third thing that, not necessarily a lesson learned, but one of the things, it's a strategy that I have, is that I want to reciprocate the feedback to my teachers that this is important work. So I get out into the buildings, even if it's just a walkthrough, looking for evidence. I'll leave Post-it notes on doors saying, "I love how I can see that you're decoding words on the whiteboard." Or they'll send me text or pictures of where kids have decoded spelling words or a multiple choice word on a test and say, "Can you tell what rule we're working on?" And I have to chuckle because it has made a big difference. But reciprocating that feedback with your teachers and letting them know that you still want them to be excited about what they're doing and that it's important work. Even though they've taught that lesson before in previous years, this group has never had it, and it's really important to this generation, especially in the generation of drag and drop. This is a generation of where they get a second chance to guess, and I don't feel like they're really looking through the words when they're reading, but this program requires them to do that. Makes them really think, process.
A lesson learned is more explicit reading instruction. I don't know necessarily how many of our teachers come out really equipped to be deep down and into what are these kids missing and how can I help them. So the more that we can provide that explicit reading instruction is very helpful. And then the sustainability and the monitoring, and that goes with our two ladies here. How do you keep that program going so that it doesn't just die? That was not this year's initiative, and now, boom. But how do we, if you got something that's work, how do you keep it working? And part of that is by that monitoring and making sure you're showing them with your visibility that it matters. Finally, having a strong RTI process so that you can identify and intervene early is critical. If you let it go too long, they aren't going to have that positive feeling about I can learn to read. So intervening early, we can catch a lot of kids if we can identify them, and we can make a difference to push them on the right path.
I want to say something if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Because I know a lot of this has sounded like we're preaching Reading Horizons. And I don't want you to feel that. I know that, I don't want you to leave feeling that way. Not that it's not a great program, it is. And I think you hear that from all of us very loud and clear. But have any of you been to Orton Gillingham training? You ever attended the Orton Gillingham training or anything? Okay. when I attended that last summer, that was my first aha. It's not a program. It's just a model, okay? When I attended that, I thought, why was I never taught this stuff? Now, I've been teaching elementary school for 16 years, a reading coach for 2. I never knew these things. Why? So when I was able to be in a position where I could affect change, that was one of the first things I went looking for. And so that's what led me to explore the Reading Horizons program. It wasn't so much that they came to me and they sold me on a sales pitch. I went searching them, just like you said you did, because I saw that need in myself, and I knew if I felt that way, lots of other teachers do as well. And so I find it interesting myself that we have someone from Texas, Ohio, and Alabama, and we're all experiencing the same trends among our teachers and our schools. But the program that Reading Horizons, what they offer, has been able to meet those needs. But not just those. I had a teacher message me last week, and she said it's not just the strugglers. Yeah, they're learning from this, but they're finding that their high students and they're above, like high average, have lots of gaps that they've been able to fill by going back, because those children were sight readers, they were using picture clues, they were using context clues, but this has actually helped them to be able to fill in some of the gaps for those kids as well. So.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. If you have any questions or want to talk to any of the panelists individually, feel free to do that. And thank you so much for coming.